Welcome back to Veterans Claims Ambush. We are up to Lesson 22 in a college-level course. And I'm going to be going through where we left off with a congressional inquiry, how they're done, and so forth. I introduced you to the nature of a congressional inquiry earlier on. I showed you the front page, how the members are listed, what the reports look like. Okay? And then, to be thorough, I took you through some of the listings of members. I took you through the dates, the fact that there is a chairman or chair lady, members from all over the country, and they get together, put out these reports. Then we see opening statements. We see prepared statement. This is normal. Witnesses will have prepared statements. They don't have to, but they often read them at the hearings. Let's continue. We have some witnesses. Kelly Kordich. Now, I want you to Google that name. Google Kelly Kordich, or Kordich auf Deutsch. Senior counsel, then Board of Veterans Appeals. All right. And she had a prepared statement that was 43 pages long. Google that name. This report is 2014. 2014. She did not leave. Let's go through the index. We have a statement from the American Legion. We have American Veterans, prepared statement. This is the organization, prepared statement, 58 pages. They don't have to read them. Sometimes you give it over and you are there for questions. Or you may have a brief statement, 1 page. But nonetheless, this is in forever the congressional record. Okay? And look who showed up. Accompanied by Chief Counsel for Policy and Procedure, Board of Veterans Appeals. So look who showed up. Okay, here we go into the session. Where? Why did it meet? Very, very ministerial stuff. Okay. And I went over this part in the last video, which is management to hide veterans' claims, okay, the time frames, times cases have been sitting within BVA, and manipulate cases to achieve a goal of 55,170 claims. And as I told you, that's what Board of Veterans Appeals is getting. How many remands is that going to result in, which will be expedited in front of your regular claim? And the pressure will really be on your regular claim to get through, I use the phrase, out of the barn, as quickly as possible to make VBA look like it's doing its job, which this number tells you VBA is not doing. Which is why I say, take VBA, get rid of it. Give the whole thing over to Social Security. And then the Board of Veteran Appeals, veteran law judges, go over to Social Security as administrative law judges. Not a big deal. Unless, of course, you have a vested interest. Okay, so now we have, this is Congress speaking. We have already seen evidence of data manipulation within the Veterans Health Administration, the Veterans Benefits Administration, VBA. I've introduced you to some of those concepts. I took you back to about 2015. Congress is telling you in 2014 they have seen this before. the point. It can't be fixed. You see? It's recidivist. If Congress doesn't change it, it remains the same. An extensive House Veterans Affairs Committee investigation, brought on largely through the bravery and honor displayed by VA whistleblowers, has uncovered numerous processes the BVA uses to manipulate data. This is BVA administration. This does not mean that individual decisions, like the one I showed you earlier, with 14 remands, was somehow crooked. It doesn't mean that at all. What it means is BVA administration, full of GS-14s and SES, Senior Executive Service, pay grade people. This is Congress talking about this. This isn't me. Manipulate data. BVA has counted the same cases multiple times to pad its numbers and make it look like they are achieving high goals for processing veterans' claims. All the while older, more complex cases and the veterans involved in those cases are languishing in the name of the Board of Veterans' Appeals goals. They changed the reporting system. They changed the nomenclature. They can stop the clock. Okay? A rocket document system to pull easy cases out of the docket order and adjudicate those cases to pad its numbers. Even though the process violates the law says you are to have the cases heard in the order they are received. This is 2014. Okay? I had to take a case to the Court of Appeals of Veterans Claims because VBA refused to work on BVA remands, which were expedited by law. That case I filed at the CAVC was in 2021. Do things change? Number 5, this is not me talking. The BVA, I should add, administration, has arbitrarily increased yearly case production for administrative law judges, which resulted in these judges simply signing cases without reviewing them and not taking advantage of available tools that would shorten the time for adjudicating veterans' claims. This is 2014. 6, do you see this wave building? The BVA admin has transferred cases from storage to the attorneys and administrative law judges, even though they are already overloaded with cases. Overloaded. Thereby hiding the amount of time a case has been sitting idle in case storage. 7. Cases are being processed and closed, and the original decision is vacated, and that is counted as a completed case a second time. Then when it is returned to BVA administration for completion, it is counted as a closed case for a third time. Out of the 55,170 cases shown as completed last year, only approximately 15,000 were actually adjudicated. The remainder are... Look, this is Congress. This isn't me. The remainder are remanded. Uh-oh. So we had, what was that original number we were looking at? Here it is, 55,100. of which only 15,000 are actually finally decided. So that leaves us with, from 55,000, we take 15,000, we get to 40,000. This is Congress speaking. The remainder were remanded, which means that veterans like me, potentially like you, still have not received a decision on their cases respectively. That means there were 40,000 remands. Listen to what I'm telling you. VBA has to be dissolved. Give it to Social Security. Administrative Procedures Act. Due process. You can see your file. You know what's going on. I was dealing with VBA in 2014 and BVA in 2015. I didn't know any of this. That's the funny part about it. It's not funny in individual cases. It is funny because I was caught in this forest of ambush. I reflect back on it, and I have never, ever heard of any part of the federal government operating this way. You have heard the stories about, oh, if the government's involved, it's terrible. I got news for you. Are there highways in this country? Can you get in an airplane and fly from New York to California safely? Can you land in crowded airports with planes coming in every which way because there are air traffic controllers? Right? When you buy a car, is there a reasonable assurance that it is made to operate as a warranted car? When you buy gasoline at Station A in New York City and you drive to California, are you reasonably assured that the gasoline you may have to buy along the way as you drive the 10 days is, on a qualitative basis, good? When you eat food you just bought at the supermarket, do you presume it's not foul, not poisoned? Look, let me explain something. In so many instances, the institutions of the federal government work great. I don't care what your political belief is. There are institutions in the federal government that you presume are on the job 100%. And they are. VBA has to be shut down. BVA administration, this is Congress, is not BVA judges, veterans law judges. I showed you an opinion which went into microscopic detail. Okay, so far, here's what Congress is saying. So why wasn't the head of VBA fired? Why wasn't the head of BVA administration fired if this is true? I want you to imagine that planes didn't work, that gasoline wasn't reliable, that food could be corrupted and poisoned on a routine basis, that there was no enforcement of federal standards for food, fuel, the flow of utility services like electric and so forth. Airplanes were bumping into each other. Do you understand, if these occurrences really happened, the heads of agencies would be fired and their senior staff would be fired. But it doesn't work like that with the VA and you. Therefore, remember, Valley Forge, expect nothing. Short break. Okay, now, we are back. The only thing I want to show on this is the opening statement of Ann Kirkpatrick, member of Congress, ranking member on this subcommittee. This is fairly normal stuff where you have an opening statement. It may be read, it may be extemporaneous. Here's the part I want to show you. I routinely hear from veterans in my district in Arizona. They tell me they are waiting years to receive a decision on their appeals. This is unacceptable. Write to your congresspeople. Tell them you vote. Tell them that you are concerned. Because otherwise, they don't know. All they will get is what the agency employees tell them. Write to your congresspeople and let them know. So, Congressperson Ann Kirkpatrick, a ranking member, she's been there for a while, I hear from veterans in my district. That's the important part of this page. Okay? That's you. I am hopeful that today's hearing will provide us, the congresspeople, members, with the opportunity to begin to identify these solutions. You see, what they're trying to do is they're trying to fix it. These are bipartisan problems. Your politics doesn't matter. They don't care who you are, what you look like, what you've been doing. These are veterans' issues. Many of the members of Congress are either veterans or have close relatives, sons, daughters, cousins, nephews, mothers, fathers, who were, are, may be service members. Both sides of the aisle, bipartisan. You must let them know, otherwise they don't know, and they are looking for solutions. Well, I'm giving you my solution. I hope we can begin the discussion today. Good manners, isn't it? It's not going to happen. Okay. Thank you, Ranking Member Kirkpatrick. Please waive opening remarks. Let's get going. Statement of Kelly Kordick. This is the formality. I'm a senior counsel at the Board of Veteran Appeals in Washington, D.C. I am also an Army veteran, having served in the United States Army Transportation Corps for 4 years, attaining the rank of captain. I started working at the board in December 1999. So by this time, she's been working there for about 15 years. I am here today because as a veteran, not just as an employee, I am appalled and saddened by unchecked, oh, you know where this is going, mismanagement, corruption, and blatant disregard for our nation's veterans that has become characteristic of board management, administration. For management's own self-preservation rather than for the good of the veterans. This gets wild. I am also here as the voice for many board employees mired in a toxic environment, toxic management system that uses a culture of fear and intimidation to attain its goals. A few years ago, I myself exposed a bullying and morally corrupt manager, and as a result have endured retaliation and intimidation by board management, the board administration. The board's management is ruthless in stifling criticism, going so far as to weaponize the department-wide I care principles to label critics as anti-veteran. Has anything changed? Has anything changed? What radical change did you hear of at the board administration since this time. I'm not talking about individual veterans law judges writing case reports. Judgments. This is a reflection of human nature. Short break. Well, sometimes it's not so short a break, but I am back. Most of the appeals languishing the longest were either simply awaiting review for signature or just waiting to be assigned to an attorney. There was no legitimate business reason to allow cases to languish for months. Here we go. Disturbingly, many of these long-neglected appeals were ultimately remands or grants. Remands or grants. You may recall that I referred to a system called VBA. Here she describes what VBA is. The front office manipulated the board's electronic record-keeping system called VBA by electronically shifting. Short break. I'm back. Okay, so we got VBA. They were shifting things around. If a case was a large case or more than 2 issues, you see what was happening? They had a production goal. They announced a production goal. Take a look at the board's annual report. They still use production goals. Unpaid overtime. Unpaid overtime in the federal government is illegal. You cannot force somebody to work overtime in the federal government without paying them. It all goes back to the budget process. How could this be happening? Production goals. Judges were dramatically and retroactively increased mid-year. What kind of place is this? Veterans will have to wait a considerably longer time for a decision on their appeal, as their cases are remanded rather than sent for an IME or VHA opinion, individual medical examination or Veterans Health Administration opinion. So now they send you to, as a remedy for this, VBA sends you for a medical exam with an internist for a brain damage issue, which the case law then says, oh, that's okay, that's sufficient. Or they send you to a nurse who's an obstetrical nurse, delivers babies, and you're there on a brain damage issue. Or the bones in your feet because you've been jumping out of airplanes in the 82nd, and your feet are shot. And they send you to a person who could not testify in court, and they get a medical opinion, and that's good enough. Do you see why? Do you see why? It's all about quantity. I showed you earlier. Quantity. So, the prepared statement of Kelly Cordish appears in the appendix. So she's not going to give 47 pages worth of reading at this point. This is her overall estimation. I'm showing it to you so you can read it on your phone. Just blow it up and read through this. So then we got a few questions. So we have committee member, Mr. Kaufman. Thank you, Ms. Cordish. And then we have a statement of Zachary Hearn. So they're going through the witnesses. This is how these things work. Who is Zachary Hearn? American Legion. A VSO, a Veterans Service Organization. I'm going to speak on the VSOs later. Sadly, claims are often remanded 2, 3, or even more times prior to having a claim finally adjudicated. Quite simply, this is unacceptable. Now, VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations, are entitled by law to represent veterans who file claims for free, no charge, and on appeals within the department, the VA. Okay, so they can go to claims and then Board of Veterans Appeals. You need lawyers to go into federal court. I'm going to give you the breakdown here. So American Legion, which is representing veterans, okay, and he's talking about their experience, okay, holding American Legion power of attorney that received dispositions during this time period, okay. Now, American Legion doesn't represent all veterans at claims or before the Board of Veterans Appeals. So he's talking about their experience. And here's what he says. This is 2014. Claims are often remanded 2, 3, or even more times prior to having a claim finally adjudicated. I'm going to say something harsh. Where have you been? Where have you been, VSO? Sadly isn't enough. You see, every one of these members in this committee you're talking to is elected. Why don't you ask your members to take a look at the record of these members and vote accordingly? Well, wait a minute. It's charitable. They can't get mixed up in politics. So it's not just American Legion. It's all of these VSOs that Congress has chartered, given a special power to represent veterans who see all this stuff, but they can't recommend to their members that they vote accordingly. See how clever that is? Do you understand the potential conflict of interest? VSOs do a lot of great things for their members. If you file a claim, get your own lawyer. Break. I'm back. I showed you earlier where the Congresswoman was talking about hearing from her constituents. She did not talk about hearing from the VSOs. You see here where it says, sadly. Oh, stop it. Where have you been? In 2014, American Legion employs approximately a dozen professional staff and additional support staff dedicated to represent claimants seeking their benefits. I applaud that effort. I think that's great. I think it is a sincere effort to do the right thing. The Board of Veterans Appeals has you outnumbered by about 100 to, 200 to 12. They're sending back 40,000 remands, and you've got 12? This is the American Legion. I attended a roundtable hosted by Senators Bob Casey and Dean Heller. It doesn't matter if the senators are there. These are bipartisan issues. So as I take a look at this report and I read through this, okay, he's telling me we can identify common errors by VA adjudicators. They can track this stuff. Why don't you fire these VA adjudicators for their common errors? The American Legion wants to treat the disease. They're looking at this in terms of BVA. The whole discussion is only about the symptom. They want to treat the disease. Common errors by VA adjudicators. And he's got a long statement that he gives in. We have another. Okay. On behalf of DAV, Disabled American Veterans, I am pleased to testify on ways to improve the appeals process. Well, you begin with firing senior management, right? If Kelly Kordich is correct, DAV, you begin with fire everybody who's responsible. Two main options for appellants: the traditional appeals process. Okay, it goes through this. Look at it, read this. The local decision review officer reads your claim. And your claim is for, let's say, a spinal injury in your upper back. And that DRO is going to be reading, after they tap yours and put it back on the national work queue, something to do with, a neurological disorder with brain damage. And then they're going to be talking about scar tissue from extensive burns on the legs. And then they're going to be talking about broken hands, amputations, problems with vision, all caused by common injuries on military service. And they are expert at none. And they have no special training in any of the sciences involved. So they're going to send you out to an internist and then make believe that's a sufficient report, and then tap, you're out of the barn, and you're going to be remanded. And they know it. So you see, here we have a decision review officer. Oh, and these titles are the same today. DAV strongly supports the DRO program, but we believe that the number of DROs at some regional offices is insufficient. So that's why they started National Work Queue, to cue ball you, bounce you all over the country. This is what you're facing. Do you know what the easy solution in 2014 was? Just get rid of it. Give it to Social Security. They deal with 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million people every year. Let me talk about sufficient resources. Okay, freeze this on your screen, blow it up a little bit and read it. This is so painful. I'm going to skip ahead because I think you get the basic gist of where this is going. And DAV does some wonderful things for veterans. It really does. So does the medical system in the VA. See? So now we have some questions. And I cannot emphasize enough. Okay. So I introduced you to Congressional member Kaufman, who is the chair. Okay. Thank you so much to the DAV. Questions for Kelly Kordich. I'm going to focus on you on 3 questions I want to ask. The first one is, are you aware of any ways in which the board is manipulating data in its reports as part of its request to achieve the 55,000 production goal? Yes, sir. What is happening is that the board is counting remands, which are not final decisions, more than once. And we also have cases that we call Bryant cases, which are being counted more than once, sometimes 3 times. A remand, this is Kordich. A remand, as I said earlier, comes back sometimes numerous times. What do you think happens when that's going on? It's called death watch. I have to take a break. Okay, I'm back. So years go by. Years go by. Remands come back several times because VBA sent junk work up and then on remand sends the same junk work back up. And there's nothing that the Board of Veterans' Appeals can do about it, and nobody is disciplined. And it doesn't change. So, take a look at this. See what she's talking about, these Bryant cases? Read that on your own time. Let's go down to this. There is a thing called a rocket docket. It usually means in a federal district court that certain courts really go through cases quickly. Certain courts are famous for just taking their time, but the nickname rocket docket comes out of certain federal district courts, trial courts. The BVA is not rocket anything. Okay, the rocket docket premise is that a case is supposed to be adjudicated in docket order, except for a few exceptions, like me. And those exceptions, one of them is what they use for the rocket docket is that if a case needs to be developed, a little bit complex, if it needs further evidence in order to adjudicate, then we can remand it back. Which is fine if, in fact, you screen all the cases. However, on December 13, 2013, a member of the vice chairman's staff sent out an email, their internal system, indicating that we were going to start the rocket docket program, and the program essentially gave the parameters for how we would do the program. So the program would have overtime attorneys screening cases. There would be no box cases screened. A box case is where you send in so much stuff that it comes to them literally in a box through the U.S. postal system. 500,000 pages of exhibits, proofs. That's your stuff. You have no idea what VBA has sent up on the side because it's like secret. There would be no box cases screened. There would be no cases with more than 2 issues screened. This leads us to having those veterans who are not accommodating enough to have small cases or less than 2 issues having their cases language and case storage even though they have an old docket number. See what they were doing? Hold on. Those attorneys who were screening the cases only got 20 minutes to screen each case. Let me emphasize that again. Those attorneys who were screening the cases only got 20 minutes to screen each case. How many issues? 2. Size? A box. It didn't matter what was in the box. Short break. I'm back. Ranking member Ann Kirkpatrick is going to ask some questions. Now, this is an interesting question. This is very insightful. Now, how many hands then touch a single file in the appeals process? How many hands touch? Remember I told you VBA, cue ball, touch? Member Kirkpatrick knows exactly what's going on. Oh, well, what you had was the initial screeners. These are the ones that send the attack letters. So who was that? That was an attorney working overtime. An attorney working overtime. Let me stop here for a second and show you something. Okay, I'm back. So we're looking at a letter, and now you know from congressional testimony that there are screeners. So, this is dated, I'm not going to put my name and address on here because it's not about me at this point, September 27, 2023. FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request. Actually, it was a Privacy Act demand. Request dated September 7th of 2022. Oh, it's only a year to get back to me, and September 8th of 2022. And they're claiming it was received on July 23 of 2023. Okay. I'm not going to argue about this crazy numbers game. Okay. You requested records concerning the identity of the writers and senders of your Board of Veterans Appeals Board letters dated August 15th and August 22 of 2022. With the correspondence numbers, here we go. See that? You will get these numbers on attack letters from the Board of Veterans Appeals admin people. Sometimes I have to take a moment. We, the editorial we, the imperial we, have exhausted our search avenues, and no responsive records were located. You see, the letters that I got, they don't deny they were sent, because I sent them copies. They don't deny that they said FOIA, but it was really Privacy Act. Privacy Act is pretty powerful. Look at this. So, I could appeal it. They can't find, or they won't find. You see? It tells me all these things that I can do. The letters existed. They refused to give me the names. Or maybe they really don't know. These things just come out. The attack letter basically says, we can't figure out what you're trying to say. Or, on the same form, it's not timely. They have another one for you didn't sign it. But I was getting the 1-2 punch. We can't figure this out, or it's not timely. I forgot to put on this microphone. So you see what it says. Those are the dates. They do not deny the letters exist. Okay? And they can't figure out who sent them. So the burden falls back on me. This is what is known as a franked signature. It does not mean that this person sent this to me. Somebody sent it. A frank signature is a machine signature that comes out automatically. It does not mean that this person sent it. What she's talking about here, who the examiners are. Does that help us perhaps a little bit as to who sent it? So, if it's a box case, meaning it came in a box, it goes back to case storage. The most devastating part of the testimony of Kordich is the following. Let me readjust that. Question, Member Kirkpatrick. Do you think there is adequate training for the people who are doing this type of work? You will hear this time and time again. Is there adequate training? I showed you in other kinds of documents. Well, we'll just retrain people. So the member asks a vital question. Is the training adequate? Look at the response. I think there was adequate training. I do not think there was an adequate enough time for them to go through each case, and I do not. And my main problem was that box cases or more than 2 issued cases were just left languishing, and we were getting the easy cases out instead, or screening the easy cases instead. The training was adequate. They knew exactly what they were doing. What do you do with people like this? They're giving false statistics to Congress for their budget. What happens if you lie to Congress? Training was adequate. They knew what they were doing. This is devastating. Please take a picture, read this, freeze the frame, blow it up. My goodness. Imagine a box case where there would be documents that were 6 inches high. How about 12 inches high? There are civil lawsuits where discovery alone is 20 feet high. That's discovery. This is the incoming box. Now, if the incoming box is 6 inches high in paper, what does VBA Claims work look like in terms of depth? What is it, 1 page? Time for a break. I'm back. I'm showing you another page from the testimony. Freeze it, print it, blow it up while you're looking at it. Now they're talking about cherry-picking cases. They're trying to find a solution. You know what the solution is. What is the solution? Remember I told you different agencies of the federal government. Nobody works like this. Here's another one. You can freeze it. I'm saving you the trouble of finding it. Okay. Now we're on to a different page. I don't know how to describe this page. So we know it's not a matter of the training. This is Kordich again, talking to Congressional member Takano. The board has a problem with a culture of fear and intimidation for a long time, has had. Attorneys are afraid to express their views, and it is always met by swift retaliation if they just make a benign comment. I showed you the forum of hate that existed for 7 years. It was caught, it was eliminated. So this is another condition at the board through its administration. This does not mean that veterans' law judges are writing corrupt opinions. It does mean that at this time, this was the view of this whistleblower witness. How can a veterans' law judge be afraid to express an opinion? How can a staff attorney writing opinions be afraid to express an opinion? How can that happen? Nobody was fired. Next page. This is 21 of 53. This is how fear works. Okay? A weapon. Here's a question from member Walorski. Are any performance bonuses attached? Oh, yes, there are. Performance bonuses. Do you see this? I'm not going to read it. You read it. And I will add, coincidentally, none of them are veterans, because she was. 4 years, active duty, U.S. Army. Former captain, transportation branch. There we go. You can copy this one down and read it. Freeze it, read it. So, and then I'll tell you what's really going on. Okay. More of it. You can freeze it and read it. Okay, here we have Mr. Hearn from the American Legion saying we'd like to speed this process up. Here we go again. We're on page 25 of 53 of the report, and we're talking about vehicles. I was on vehicles in 2015, and then I didn't realize it, but vehicles has a delete button. Boof. A perfected Form 9, filed in 2015. Poof, gone. But I found later on that even after I had a BVA judgment, that VBA could ignore the judgment, and as long as they were ignoring it, and somebody in a branch, a regional office, was actually trying to decide something, they were told by supervisors, delete that. And they did. I forced VA to admit it. Okay. This is the last part of this report I'll give you, because it just goes on and on and on. 26 of 53. So this is, Kordich is being asked some questions. The other witnesses too. So here we go. Well, the information on that is pretty troubling, especially with some of the recent reports of the IG not being as independent as we presume they are. They are supposed to be under the statute. What is this member saying? I showed you IG reports, and I told you what a real audit is. These are not my words. IG, not independent. Okay. You can freeze it and read it. This is interesting because Kordich is still talking about her experience. Understand, she's an Army officer, 4 years, and then she's an attorney. She's been at this place for 15 years by this time. I have to take a break. This is definitely the last part of this today. So the question, obviously, this is insightful. They know what's going on. The question comes up. Kordich, as a witness, come on, you've got all this experience. Are you saying then it is leadership? Yes, or definitely. Not the worker bees? It's an interesting term. Worker bees. Not the worker bees at all, because they have a production goal. They do it. They are not going to let a case sit for 606 days or 200 and some. Why? Because they need the credit for that case, and so do the judges. So they sign the cases up. Up in management, there is no production, so it is... What would be the reason for a veteran to, here is a veteran, I see them all the time, sitting at home. This is the member responding to voters. Okay? I've got to go back and tell them, his voter veterans, that your chart just sat on somebody's desk for 200 days waiting for a signature. Did I hear that wrong? Yes, sir, and sometimes 606 days in processing. So I have got to go home and look at, I just got back from Vietnam not long ago, look at one of my colleagues that served in Vietnam and walked through the mud and did that for our country, and they're waiting on somebody to take their, excuse me, I almost said something bad. What do you think he said? He restrained himself. 606 days. It is hard to make a politician speechless, but I am speechless at this point. So, you see what the members are doing? So then they had this person come in and testify. And if you want, you can read her testimony. Freeze it and read it. There's a mission statement. VA is a customer service organization. The multi-layered Veterans Appeal process is unique across federal and judicial systems with a continuous open record. Oh, it has an open record. Oh, really? They can't even tell who sent me attack letters. It's completely ex parte. You don't get discovery. You see, it's an open record. So they put it into VBMS. That's what I wanted you to see. VBMS is a computer system. What did I show you earlier, prior lecture, to the effect that OIG caught Caught them. VBA taking decisions before they had the medical records. And there was discussion about CAPRI, C-A-P-R-I system, the medical record system, and the VBMS system. Not working. But they took the decisions, this is VBA, without reading the record. Freeze it and read it. Freeze it and read it. See, it's Oracle's problem. It's the computer's problem. It's all computers' problems. Freeze it and read it. Actually, if you read all this stuff, it may not be good for your health, but you can't file a claim for that. Hey, that's it for this one. I am not your lawyer. I am not giving you legal advice. Do you understand me? You need a lawyer. Consult a lawyer. Institutions, unless they are forced to change, do not change. There are institutions in the federal government you rely on blindly every day that work wonderfully. Get on a plane going from New York to Miami to San Francisco to Boise, Idaho to Dallas, Texas. You're going to pass through many, many radar nets, air traffic control zones, and you will presume they all work, and they do. The food you will eat today, you believe, is somehow overseen and regulated by the federal government, and it is. Get it? This isn't about politics. So, you're looking at an institution, it can't be fixed. Get rid of VBA. Give it to Social Security. Do the appeals under the Administrative Procedure Act. Last comment. The big change that came in 2017, 2017, the Appeals Modernization Act, you know what it did? It said that when VBA, to meet its goals, sends you your denial, not having read the medical reports, you can appeal right away to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. Do you understand how fast that is? The decision is in your lap, and you've got 3 levels of possible appeals to the BVA. You could go back and ask VBA to take a second look from a higher level official. Where do you go? What happens if it's a complex medical injury disease? I showed you, I get attack letters. I send a Privacy Act demand in. Oh, we can't figure out who sent these. Do you think that would happen at Social Security? The person sending it would have signed it. Okay. Enough for today. Life does not change. Sometimes with an institution, you just get rid of it, and you basically move it sideways to one that does work. At the end of this month, Social Security checks will be going out to umpteen millions of people. There will be problems. There will be litigation. But there's a body of law. Okay. That's it for today.